This will not last forever, and I need you to stay strong and remember that. And we cannot look away, but if we stare at the fire for too long, we're going to get burned. So that's why I'm really hoping that you'll join me on this journey and create an imaginary world of what could it look like, because I understand change is different. Change is scary, and some people don't want to face it. But maybe if we can help create an idea, a reflection of what could be, we can help people see where we're going wrong and where we need to make a U-turn and who we shouldn't be idolizing. Welcome to Charm Hawaii, the show where I invite you behind the scenes to join me on an interactive journey from pen to publish. In this episode, I'm going to introduce to you the town of Charm Hawaii, and I know I said that last time, but this time I mean it. We're going to discuss what a world could look like if it was built differently than what we experience now. What would laws look like if they were built us, the people, instead of the 1%? Let's be honest. Thank you for joining me on my second episode ever of my podcast that I just started. My name is Nadine, and I'm writing a book of the same name, Charm Hawaii. This is an accompanying podcast that I'm hoping that you'll join me from pen to published, from the ground up. Learn all about the characters, the place, the history, whatever. We're gonna have an immersive, interactive experience together. That's my hope and that's my vision. And I want to talk about what it's going to look like. I'm going to be asking for a lot of input and votes and discussions on this imaginary town of Charm Hawaii. I told you a little bit about the Stepford Wives meets Top Gun in the last episode. That town needs a name, and we're going to have fun creating that together as well. Most of that town writes itself. I mean, it's pretty weird, but I definitely will need some input on that. The town of Charm Hawaii is just your basic sleepy Hawaii town, or just any kind of coastal town that you want to think of. Well, that's not true. Nothing about Hawaii is like a coastal town on the mainland, but that's a story for another day. The book, The Compassionate Community, starts with an introduction where she quotes Matthew 25:40, "Whatsoever you do to the least of my people, you do to me." Then she talks about what she did when she encountered a homeless person. She felt so helpless, and she knew his problems were never going to go away, no matter how many dollars she gave him. She figured that we need to do something at a systemic level, but for the time being, did what little she could, which was give him some money. She goes on to say what she learned, and she says shelters were a stopgap that, in fact, kept people homeless. Since they had to just line up by mid-afternoon to get in, they couldn't get jobs or keep the children in school if those children could even get into school. The nightly television news is always, in some sense, a source of distress. After news bites about child abuse, drive-by shootings, and burned-out buildings of the inner city, we watch ads that tell us how to keep our skin looking young, reduce our waistline, grow new hair, or thicken what we have. A story on homelessness is followed by a pitch for the newest and latest high-priced luxury car. The endless juxtaposition, sorry, I have a hard time pronouncing that word, of the awful and foolish can deaden our senses even if they lead to a feeling of despair. Our politicians talk to us about balanced budgets, national security priorities, and billions of dollars in programs for military spending. We hear of the need to reduce money spent on welfare, knowing that some money protected by the government is welfare for the rich, while the subsidy to the pregnant unmarried teenager is denied. The subsidy to the tobacco industry is protected. Don't forget, this was written in 1998, published in 1998, but it still very much rings true. Out of another reality, the religious one we claim as part of our heritage, we believe it is important to protect the young, the weak, the elderly, the poor. Jesus said, "Suffer the little children to come to me." Yet, we have little children being denied health care, food, and housing in the name of national security or balanced budgets. Does the Statue of Liberty really say, "Send me your poor"? And if it does, why is that barbed wire going up along our southern border? We are caught up in a new world where some of our cherished values have been suspended. My generation was born during the Great Depression, and many became part of the Great Society. We believed that if we studied and worked hard, did our part, we would succeed. Now, some of my contemporaries look at the poor, the unemployed, the homeless, and say with conviction that if those people wanted to, they could make it too. What has been forgotten is that the children of the 30s came out on top at the cost of a major world war, which, in the weird reality of the times, meant an end to the Depression and the start of good times for many people in America. Then she talks about the sense of community that came about. But notice how she talks about only a small group of people, and she may not have articulated who those people were, but she does. She knows exactly who she's talking about and who she's talking to. She goes on to say this book is about a lot of other people who, in our country and in many countries around the world, are in the dangerous situation of trying to live and to do the high wire act of survival without a safety net. It is about what has happened because compassion seems to have died out in whole sections of our contemporary society. It is about the need to revive an understanding of community that is bigger than the immediate family or even the neighborhood. It is about the one who said, "Whatsoever you did to the least of my people, you did to me." Matthew 25:40. It's about a whole host of social problems that exist all around us, social problems afflicting real people, the hungry, the unemployed, the victims of crime and violence, those without shelter, the elderly who are fearful of needing to choose between medicine and food or heat. It is about children in the schools that do not teach even the basics that, after 12 years, turn them out as adult illiterates. This book is about the failed strategies of the past. The solution to crime, we have been told, is to have more police on the streets and more prisons, and yet, while the crime rate is going down, the prison population is going up. The solution to teenage pregnancy is to deny welfare to the mother and her children, yet in states that have refused funding for additional children born to unwed mothers, the state-funded abortion rate is rising. The solution to homelessness is more shelters or jail, though not in my neighborhood. The welfare system is said to be ineffective and destructive of families. The solution? Make them go to work, even though poor education and low skills limit the job potential, and their salaries they will receive will not provide enough to live on or to afford safe childcare. One night, listening to one of our congressional leaders talking about orphanages and workhouses for the poor, I found myself raging. Doesn't he know that these things do not work? Perhaps he doesn't. Or perhaps he does, but does not care. There is a growing sense that the government's goal is to protect the wealthy while the rest must take care of themselves. Supply-side economics, a trickle-down theory, claims that as the rich get richer, some of it will trickle down to the rest. We know from experience that does not work. Another reminder, this was printed back in 1998, almost 30 years ago. And it still very much rings true. And I have not even gotten to the part that's going to give you chicken skin, but I think you got to admit she's onto something, and it sounds familiar, doesn't it? Almost 30 years later, and we're in the same boat, but it's so much worse. It's so much worse. And she knew it was going to get worse. She called it, and she tried to do what she could in her part of the world, to do what she could to reverse course, to make a U-turn, to fix things. She tried, and I'm hoping to continue her words And I'm really hoping that you'll go ahead and just like this. And if I get 100 likes, then I'll feel like maybe I have something to show the publisher of, hey, people want this book. Can we get it published? Whatever profits that I can potentially make from it, I do not want to make money off of this. I would like to be able to create a donation in her name to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the Medical Mission Sisters. I encourage you to go look them up and learn about what they do. Organizations like them are like a macro level in the big picture of things. They don't have the funds that, say, Susan G. Komen does. That's just one that popped into my brain. Nothing against them, but they got a lot of money. They don't need as many donations as the sisters do. What the sisters do is they are in the community and they are helping, they are teaching, they are just incredible. Just go find out for yourself. If you want to go ahead and just give them a donation flat out, there is a spot on their website. Go ahead and click donate, and please do that. If you want to do it in memory of my aunt, the writer of this book, I would love that. She would love that. We would love that. Her name is Catherine Harmer. If you want to say happy birthday, sisters, go ahead and send them $5 or 10, 20, 100, whatever you got. 5,000, go for it. You feeling generous? Here's a really good place to go ahead and be generous at. They help the community, and these are the kind of people and places that we as a society need to be putting our money into so that they can be the change and get it out there. Target doesn't need your money. Walmart doesn't need your money. The sisters do. So maybe you can skip a Starbucks for a day and send that $9 to the sisters instead. Things like that make a big difference. Just a suggestion and an idea and maybe a little bit of a request. But I'm going to carry on here. Let's talk about... Guys, I'm only in the introduction. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to stay on track here. Continuing on, the morning after my raging at the congressman, I decided to look for strategies that could work to make changes we need so badly for our world today. That decision led to this book and started me on a wonderful journey of discovery. I found myself moving beyond the borders of America to some very creative ideas in Bangladesh, in Ghana, in Peru, and many other places. We have much to learn from the so-called third world, or better, the two-thirds world. What was so overpowering as I looked at these strategies was how simple they are, how local, how independent of large bureaucracies. Sorry, I'm not good at pronouncing that word. These strategies that work can be done in different ways by different people. There can be a place in the strategies for everyone to be a part of the solution instead of the problem. What we need to reclaim are the three essentially human elements of compassion, community, and justice. By doing so, we can commit ourselves and we can find a renewed understanding of what Jesus meant in the Beatitudes, what Muhammad meant in the Quran, and what Isaiah spoke of in the Hebrew Testament. We might find the courage to do whatever is needed. We might find that we do not have to choose between looking away from the homeless man with his styrofoam cup or putting $1 in it. We might even find that we can help to make a difference that will last. If we do, then we will not have lived in vain. I don't believe for a second this incredible, amazing woman lived in vain. And she was so humble that she would never be the one to say that. She was the most down-to-earth, kindest, not always the nicest, but she was never mean, never cruel, always kind, always giving, absolutely amazing human being that I am so honored to call my aunt. She was even my sponsor in Catholicism. She was unable to attend the ceremony because she was too busy being a nun and saving the world, humbly, quietly, just person by person, village by village, town by town, city by city. She worked everywhere from Philadelphia to India, to a small tiny town in India. She traveled the world just being there for people and truly living in the image of the Jesus that I grew up with. Not this creepy white Jesus that she even warns us about in her own way in this book. The Jesus that is in the Bible. the real Jesus, not the one that has been distorted by nefarious people that are in control and power now. This will not last forever, and I need you to stay strong and remember that. And we cannot look away, but if we stare at the fire for too long, we're going to get burned. So that's why I'm really hoping that you'll join me on this journey and create an imaginary world of what could it look like, because I understand change is different. Change is scary, and some people don't want to face it. But maybe if we can help create an idea, a reflection of what could be, we can help people see where we're going wrong and where we need to make a U-turn and who we shouldn't be idolizing. The voices in the ears of young people, impressionable children, young adults, and even adults that are old as me and even older. There is no such thing as not too much learning and growing, but the voices that we're listening to matter. And right now, I am not seeing voices that I want my children listening to. I don't allow them to, but I cannot control what other kids listen to. It is a weird time for my kids. They go to a school that is very diverse when it comes to everything from financial status to ethnicity to everything, just everything. They are learning very quickly who they want to be and who they want to hang out with. And they are wide awake, because I wouldn't have it any other way. Of course, they will always be growing, but it is so important to me that they, as little white boys coming up in this world, know their place and honor those around them, especially their friends and the people that they care about and the people that they call cousins and love and their aunties and uncles. That they not only see them as equal, but to honor their background as well. And women, I want them to know exactly who their mother is and to acknowledge the plight of all of the women that came before them, that this country was built on women, but primarily Black women and Black people, and we've got to stop pretending otherwise. And we're going to be talking about that stuff. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe just take a minute, put some space and ask yourself why. Maybe don't say anything dumb in the comments and really think about it, okay? In the comments, let's talk about what would a world look like if it was inspired by this book that I'm talking about. In the comments on this particular podcast, I want you to tell me what you think about this book. All right, I'm going to move on to chapter 1. And I'm going to read a little bit more before I get popped for copyright or whatever, and help me be able to say, hey, let's get this book out there, guys. Can we republish this? Okay. Help me by liking, commenting, help me. Chapter 1, she calls a call to compassion, and then she quotes Matthew 5:7, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." Then she talks about the Beatitudes and Jesus and Joan of Arc. Let's get back to that real quick. Movies, television, and now virtual reality computers can touch the imagination and thus the feelings at a deep level. It is possible to watch a play and be moved to tears by the final words of a Joan of Arc about to enter into a fiery death. Exposure to the pain and suffering of the other can have another side, however, which is that we become hardened to the things we see and shut them out. During the Vietnam War, the daily television news broadcasts showing the suffering of children mobilized some people into anti-war action or relief efforts. The same broadcast closed other people's minds and hearts to the reality, even to the point of denial. This sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Don't forget, this was written in 1998 by a wide-awake nun from Philadelphia. It is possible to treat it like a movie. It was even possible to watch these scenes nightly and believe that death of a child from a napalming was essential to our national security, and in any case, she was probably Viet Cong. Are you getting chills yet? Does this sound familiar? She goes on to say, it is important to see the connections between compassion and justice, to know that without compassion it is impossible to live justly. It is very important to recover a sense of passion, to recognize it as basic to any sense of morality and justice. Compassion is the core of true justice. If we find ourselves looking at the suffering around us and concluding that is all their own fault, quote, and we are comfortable listening to politicians talking about balancing budgets on the backs of the poor, it may be that we have lost not only our sense of compassion, but also our sense of justice. We hear good people expressing sentiments such as, why should that hard-earned money of the working people support those who are lazy? What is frightening is not only that such statements are based on faulty information, but also that we are talking about other human beings, about people who are suffering, children and the elderly, women and men, and we are talking about them as if they are not human beings just like us. We have created a chasm between ourselves and those who suffer. The call to be just is not a matter of choice, but rather of responsibility. It is a call to what is basic to our humanity. While frequently supported and called for by religious systems, justice itself is the nature of humanity. Even the child recognizes what is fair or unfair and rails against those things perceived as unjust. We speak of having a right to something. We are calling upon justice. Today, we see in action a reality that was noted in another time by a great moral theologian, Reinhold Niebuhr, I don't know how to pronounce that, who believed that what made it easier for us to be inhumane to one another was our tendency to establish a we-they dichotomy. If we see ourselves in one reality and the others as they, as somehow opposite and possibly antithetical to our good, it is much easier to take very inhumane stances. If the pregnant teenage mother and her child are viewed as they, as other, over there who threaten the welfare of our children over here, it becomes easier to talk of cutting off benefits to that mother and her child. This is the element of distancing oneself, of looking the other way and blaming the victims so that as a result, these people are less real. We are like children playing cops and robbers, shooting one another, assuming that when the game is over, everyone will get up and walk away. This is a failure of imagination, of rationality, of compassion, and in the end, a failure of justice. Not only do the mother and her child suffer, we suffer for having lost compassion and justice. As a result, we become less than human. She later goes on to say, in the last few years of the 20th century, we can trace the weakening of a sense of community to a number of factors. There is clearly a growing loss of trust in the public part of life, that world outside of intimate community of family and home. It is fed by the fear of crime, which leads to a distrust of the stranger, including those different from us, even if they live on the same street. Trust is further undermined by the frustration with public officials, politicians, and the political system in general, all of which are frequently viewed as self-serving rather than community-serving. The increasingly negative aspects of political campaigning in the last 25 years have led many to feel that those running for political office are more interested in winning the office regardless of the cost in money or truth than they are in working for the betterment of the country, its people, and the larger world. And now we can say 50 years nothing has changed. She goes on to explain the lack of community and how far we've gotten away from it and how it's detrimental. And she says, many of today's societal structures are not functioning well. Our schools seem unable to educate. Our churches often provide for spiritual needs only at a very superficial and formalized level. Families are, quote, nuclear, quote, now in a way that makes growing up a very dangerous and difficult experience for far too many children. The coming age may require new structures to replace some of those which no longer serve the common good. If we are going to attempt to develop such structures, we will need to trust the people who have the interest and ability to try new concepts and new action plans. We will need to be open to new types of partnerships based on being honest in terms of what we need and being courageous moving forward. Compassion may be what is needed to bring about a renewal of the communitarian elements so needed today. The excess which is spawned by a politics that puts an undue emphasis on individualism need to be juxtaposed with a revival of an earlier tradition of covenant and civic virtue. If the rebirth of a sense of community there could reemerge in a more humane political order. Too often, we think of politics as something that happens every few years rather than as one of the central modes by which our life is bettered or worsened. Our political system, like the other systems of our world, needs to be converted to a more compassionate and community-centered reality. The sense of belonging to one another is the heart of any true community. It's not possible, but for any good and sane person at least, to turn away from those who belong to us. So for me, I talked about the community that I had, and it was just a big giant ball of diversity. I wasn't able to drill it down to one specific thing, and I think that makes me just fine. I think I turned out okay, and I highly recommend it. And I want to continue that with my kids and grow that. And if you're scared of that, I'm here to tell you, you shouldn't be. It's okay. Do I sound like a scary, mean person? Because I assure you, I'm not. I can be blunt. I can be rude. I can be kind of bitchy sometimes. Ugh, there goes that internalized misogyny that just fell out of my mouth. Ugh. I'm trying to fix that. I'm trying to fix that in myself and inspire others to fix that in them, okay? It's things that we're all built with certain things, just happen to be started out with a lot less racism than other people did. And other people can't help being born that way, but they can help fixing themselves and doing better. And more importantly, they can help build a better world so that their kids don't continue negative cycles that they were born into. You can't help what you were born into, but you can help being a better change. So I guess what I'm trying to say is let's do better, and let's continue on with what some of my aunt's ideas were, and let's talk about what a world could look like, and help me get this book published so that I can read you the whole thing and that you can get your own copy and we can have a book discussion about it. I'm going to read you this last part of chapter 1 because it's going to matter in a minute, and here's where the chicken skin thing's going to come in a couple minutes, but hang tight. The compassionate community acting justly is clearly needed in the present world and is essential if we are to deal with the many dysfunctions of the world. If it is the compassionate and just community that will make our journey into the coming century and into the third millennium a step forward, rather than simply turning of a page on the calendar. Don't forget, this was written in 1998, so this was before the year 2000, which was the year of the Jubilee. She starts chapter 2 with Luke 6:36. Be compassionate as God is compassionate. And that's where she talks about the Jesus that I was raised on, which in my opinion is the antithesis of this white Jesus that apparently some other people were raised on and that wants to write the textbooks that my kids are going to be raised on. To which I say, absolutely not. Not a chance. Not a chance. I am very fortunate in the fact that I live in a community that I know the schools will not be teaching nonsense, but it's important to me that other schools across the mainland are not being taught bullshit. That matters. Anyway, she talks about white Jesus in her own way, but without that kind of vocabulary and how we've been talking about him lately online in a public discourse of this comparison between Bible Jesus and Republican white Jesus, because that guy's gross. I did not know he existed until I moved to a weird chunk of some of my neighbors were like white America, like white America that I had never experienced before. Anyway, let me read this book. All the great religious traditions speak of the values of the individual and the community, the virtues of mercy and compassion, and the interconnections of public and private experience. However, in every tradition, there has been an erosion of the life and vigor of the original vision and belief. Modern emphasis on economic power, political dominance, and individual against group have drained some spiritual energy from all of the traditions. In some cases, the leaders of the religions have been co-opted by political or economic powers. A fundamentalist understanding of religious reality has struck at the basic roots of religion itself. Extreme right-wing Christianity denies or limits the key and central teachings of Jesus so that love one another as I have loved you is not preached. Rather, we hear about morals and vengeance, topics that are somewhat distanced from the Jesus who walks among the people. Healing the sick, feeding the hungry, forgiving those caught in adultery, teaching the new law of love. Within some of the most conservative Jewish groups, there is a belief that the goods of this world, wealth and security, are a reward from God, and that poverty and misfortune are punishments for evil. Jesus met the same type of belief among the first century Pharisees, who could ask him of the man born blind, who has sinned, the man or his parents. Social religion is not the same as the religion of a society. Each of the religious communities must witness to its deepest values as a way of renewing and revitalizing a world that has lost its way or perhaps sold its birthright for a mess of pottage. The churches need to maintain the integrity of the vision, to act and to express themselves publicly in a manner which is authentic. The great depth of understanding that religion can bring to the world will be lost unless the religious act out their vision and wisdom. If any age has ever needed a deep spirituality to inform its reality and shape its actions, it's the present one. There will always be a tension between religion and the civic life. The challenge to religion is to resist becoming the tool of the society, to remain its challenger. We look to religion to help us understand the human reality, both individual and communal. A rediscovery of wealth of the spiritual culture, which is basic to all religions, can help us come to a renewed sense of compassionate and just community. Religion can serve to remind us that the most important elements of this life in this world are deeply connected to something greater than this world. Regardless of the words we use, the names we give to divinity, the rules we follow, the theology we formulate, there is something that we share that is beyond any of us. It is in coming in touch with this deeper reality that we begin to create a solid base for a compassionate, humane community that acts justly. She goes on to say the biblical tradition is in strong contrast to the lack of compassion. The Hebrew and Christian scriptures speak consistently of the importance of caring for the poor, the suffering, widows, children, the sick. For Jesus, compassion was a central quality in the life of anyone centered in God. The evangelist Luke 6:36 quotes Jesus as saying, "Be compassionate as God is compassionate," thus emphasizing that Jesus' message is about a way of life grounded in an imitation of God. This imitation of God goes beyond the rational mode and focuses on the importance of feeling the suffering of others so that we're moved to do something to alleviate it. To feel compassion leads us to be compassionate in action. That would be that empathy thing that they told us is really, really bad. They told us it's really, really bad because it's bad for them. It's bad for them if the rest of us have all the empathy, because that means we're going to say, hey, what you're doing is really, really bad. So when they say empathy is bad, they mean it for them because everything they say is about them. And it's important that people start waking up to that and that we do what we can to get others to see that. Anyway, let me continue with what Sister Catherine Harmer says. Jesus tells the story of the priest and the Levite who passed by the man lying injured on the road to Jericho. The Samaritan was the one who bound up his wounds, took him to an inn, and paid for his care. Jesus holds up as an example the one who was compassionate, who did not turn away. According to Jesus, the community that turns away from its neediest risks God's displeasure. The Hebrew scriptures claim the poor as those under the eye of God and warn those who oppress the poor insult their maker, but those who are kind to the needy honor God. Proverbs 14:31. In both the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, The Spirit of God calls for true righteousness, demanding much more than simple justice, requiring deep and compassionate response. In spite of those calls in the scriptures, the followers of both Judaism and Christianity have often fallen short of what God demands. It is one thing to fail to live up to one believes as an individual and as a society. It is much worse to know what is demanded and subvert that call by preaching a message of uncompassionate, uncaring oppression of the poor. Liberation theology speaks of the option for the poor, stressing that God has preferential stance towards the poor, the neglected, the deprived, and those against whom the righteousness sin. In declaring his mission, Jesus spoke directly to the reality of the poor and to what those who claim to follow him must do. He took himself as a definition of his mission, the words of Isaiah. The Spirit of God is upon me because God has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. God has sent me to proclaim release of the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of God, the year of the Jubilee, the 50th year, which will come again in the year 2000, the millennial year. Guess what? We're in the year of Jubilee again, and we have the dopest Pope ever. I am such a fan of him. Pope Leo seems absolutely amazing to me. I don't think you need to be Catholic or even Christian to listen to his words and know he's onto something. I am not asking you to go to church. I am certainly not asking you to become Catholic, but I am agnostic who was raised kind of Catholic, not super strong. I went to Catholic school, I went to church sometimes, but I wasn't fully immersed in it. Like my aunt here was and my grandpa. Now I'm agnostic. I had a little run-in with a deacon who made me feel terrible about my life, and I never should have let him make me feel that I needed to leave the church, but that was almost 25 years ago, and because of Pope Leo, I'm actually ready to go back. But I don't need to be in church to listen to his words. I'm not big on tradition and ceremonies. They confuse me and they bore me. It's just not something I'm really into. Or religion. I'm just not into organized religion, and that's not a knock on anybody. So if you don't appreciate that, if you feel some kind of way, again, I'm going to ask you to just sit with that. It's not about you, and it has nothing. I don't care. If enjoy your religion if that's what you need, and stop being mad at me for not needing it. In general, I find that Christians, especially ones who go to church often, seem to take it oddly personal that I don't do the whole church thing. But my aunt, she was a big fan of the Pope. She knew Pope John Paul II. From my understanding, she met him a few times, as did my great-grandparents. She was my great aunt. She was a Catholic nun. And my grandfather married a divorced woman with kids. So, it was interesting. They weren't happy about that, but they were happy about that. Like, they totally accepted the marriage, the kids, and the grandkids as their own, but at the same time didn't go to the wedding because that was sacrilegious, that their son was marrying a divorced and excommunicated woman due to the divorce. So it's all so complicated, right? But I don't think anybody needs to really just be pigeonholed into a certain thing. And for me, I'm just kind of open-minded and navigating my way through things. And I gotta say, Pope Leo, he seems legit. I very much enjoy listening to his words, and I have a lot of hope with him and for him that he's going to be able to get through to a lot of people in ways that we've never seen before. And maybe I'm asking too much of this poor man, but I have the highest hopes in the world for him. I think he just naturally does it. I think he's just truly sent here from a different place. Like, he really is a man of God. He's incredible. And I guess I believe more in a universal connection, less about one particular God. That's my biggest holdup. And I was very confused about the literal things in church and unliteral things. And I'm going to talk about all that stuff later. But for now, let me get back to this book. Because check this out. I mean, she is just so on to things. She is so on to calling it out the way things were. And don't forget, we're over 25 years later and we're in the same boat. And she had the highest hopes that we were going to kind of experience a big, I don't know, like a burst of change for the better back in 2000, the year of Jubilee, following by, I don't know if prophecy is the right word, but I don't know. I mean, what if she was right? We just had the wrong year. And I think we did see a lot of burst of goodness and a lot of changes in a positive direction. And then I think it's being undone. And I think right now we're in a very, very difficult place and we're headed to disaster. And if we don't do something to do a U-turn, we're going to hit a turning point into a direction real hard to come back from. And none of us want that. And I will be damned if I just sit here and pretend nothing's happening. So this is my way of trying to get change to happen quickly and to reach as many people as I can. And I hope you'll follow me and share me and just really join me on my journey, because my journey is so much more than a book. It is so much, it has nothing to do about me and everything to do with the way things could be, and inspiring hope and education and knowledge, and not in a cocky, gross, icky kind of way. It's not about me. It's not about my stories. It's about what you can learn from them and what we can teach other people and the younger generations, and how we can in the future get legislation that protects us, the people, the 99%, not the 1% that it does now. And if you think I'm wrong about that, prove me wrong. I dare you. Dare you. Go for it. Please do. Anyway, let's read more about this book and wrap this up, and then we'll go ahead and meet you over at episode 3. I don't know what we're going to talk about. Probably more about what Charm Hawaii, the town, this fictional imaginary town that's on a different imaginary timeline, is going to look like. That's where I want your help in writing the book. Don't be trying to write my story. That's mine. It's already written and I'm the one writing it. I want you to help me write this new world that will be set 5 years out in this fictional imaginary world where we do a big giant U-turn, what my aunt prayed and hoped for and worked for in every way she possibly could. And I would like to continue to honor her by getting her voice out there. I wish she was here with us. You all would have loved her. There are people that knew her, and I would love to hear from them. If I could hear, if anybody knows my aunt or anybody in the Harmer family of Fishtown, Philadelphia, I want to hear about it. I want to hear about it. Of course, I'm going to reach out to the sisters. I haven't done that yet because I'm really shy and super nervous. I might not sound shy and nervous right now, but that's just because I've been practicing. I'm not naturally an outgoing or happy-go-lucky person, and I certainly don't I talk too much, but I don't like actually talking to just anybody. But I feel compelled to put my voice out there and my story out there, and I just don't know why, so I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do that by putting out and amplifying my aunt's voice, and what I'm asking you to do is to amplify mine, and hopefully we can get this book republished and redistributed and maybe open up some minds in a different way that they never thought they could open before. Will you help me with that, please? I'm going to keep going, and if you don't agree with what she's saying, and if you don't find this interesting, then why are you still here? Just kidding. Tell me what you think about it in the comments. I want to talk about this book. Okay, so she goes on to talk about other religious traditions. Islam, founded after both Judaism and Christianity, takes from both many of its teachings and tenets. It is the third of the great religions of the book. Just as many of the teachings of Judaism are related to the socio-political realities of the times in which the Old Testament was developing, so too the teachings of Islam reflect the cultural realities of the period in which the Quran was written. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have so much in common. All three emphasize the basic connection between serving God and serving others, and all three recognize the need for and require compassion. The Islamic tradition contains the concept of, and I am so sorry if I am pronouncing this wrong, I should have looked it up beforehand, but if I stop now, I'm going to forget, and I'm going to mess this whole thing up. Zakat, the obligation of helping the poor and the suffering, Quran 22:41. The followers of Muhammad are required to strive for the good of all humanity, for the growth and development of all peoples. Zokat is connected essentially to Salat, the service of God. In Islam, it is not possible to serve God without serving others. Zakat is not simply a personal obligation, but also a communal one, a collective responsibility. The interaction of the individual and the community in Islam makes it possible to carry out the obligation of membership in that faith. The Quran speaks of compassion, as does the Bible. In defending what constitutes piety, the Quran states, "Piety lies in believing in God, the last day and the angels, the scriptures and the prophets, and dispersing your wealth out of love for God among your kin and the orphans, the wayfarers, and the mendicants, freeing the slaves, observing your devotional obligations, and in paying the zakat and fulfilling a pledge you have given, and being patient in hardship, adversity, and times of peril." Quran 2:177. The Quran, like the Bible, speaks directly of the obligation towards the alien, the immigrant, the refugee. It is important to keep in mind that when discussing immigration and refugees in Europe and North America, the issue is not simply political or economic. As the three major Western religions make clear, the response is to the reality of immigrants and refugees must include an underlying religious and spiritual dimension which transcends politics and economics and draws people to a higher call or greater demand. The Western world, Europe, and the Americas have been benefiting from the expansion of a number of other great religious traditions. Hinduism and Buddhism are no longer exotic religions only studied in comparative religion courses. We find ashrams and monasteries in many countries. Those who practice these two religions are made aware of the strong traditions of care and concern for the poor and the oppressed. In our century, we have witnessed the examples of Mahatma Gandhi and the Dalai Lama speaking out for the need of the poor, the dispossessed, the suffering. Mahatma Gandhi wrote, spoke, and demonstrated the law of love and the basic law of humanity. The doctrine of Ahimsa, non-violence, flows from the centrality of love. Gandhi preached that law of love is equivalent to the law of life. His belief in the importance of love was based in his Hindu background and grew as a result of reading and study of Christianity. As he stood against the British Raj in India and racism in South Africa, he constantly reminded the leaders of those Christian countries of the message of Jesus. Turning away from those who suffer, from the poor and oppressed, is a form of violence, even if one never raises a hand or a voice. Cutting off funds from needy mothers and children, denying essential assistance to the elderly, refusing health care to those without insurance, all these are forms of violence. Buddhism, an ancient religion, is very much alive today in many parts of the world, quite distant from the places in which it originated. It is, in a way of living, not simply a collection of tenets or descriptions. Compassion is one of the elements found both in the ancient and the modern writings of Buddhist scholars and the lives of the holy people. According to Buddhist teachings, compassion cannot simply be a theory, but needs to be practical action directed towards the alleviation of suffering. Compassion is not true compassion unless it is active. Buddhist Montaism combines the depth of the life of intense prayer with an openness to being a healing and helping presence in society. Like the Christian monks of the Middle Ages, Buddhist monks view as inconceivable the possibility of living a life of prayer and contemplation without being open to the neighbor, the migrant, the poor, and the dispossessed. What these religions proclaim in one way or another is that it is not enough to speak and think of compassion. Beautiful words and statements will not replace the actions needed. To give lip service and compassion and then allow oneself to act without compassion is to violate the deepest beliefs and values of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. So much of the dread of the poor, the hatred of the refugee and immigrant, the heartless treatment of the oppressed is based on fear. When we look at the homeless man begging outside the church door, the homeless woman pushing her cart along our city streets, we see what could and might be. The fear that underlies many of the things we say is that we too could become poor, homeless, outcast. Too often, the adherents of any religion use religion as a way of assuring themselves that all is well with them. They are doing what is asked, they work hard, and they are good to their children. Yet, when we go back to the true teachings of all great religions, we find that there is a reminder that suffering people are around us, and that it is important not to look away, not to turn our backs on the poor, the widow, the orphan, the alien, but rather to move toward them in love and compassion, in works of justice and charity, lifting their burdens, sharing our goods and ourselves, rather than fearing if we share, there will not be enough for ourselves. We are assured that to the degree that we reach out to others, so we will be cared for. What we are being asked to be by all of our theologies can be captured in the one call of Jesus to all of us, an immensely simple and yet incredibly difficult call. Be compassionate as God is compassionate. Luke 6:36. I'm going to wrap this up, and I think I'm going to hit a copyright violation if I read any more. So please like, comment, let me know if you want to hear more of this book, and let's see if we can get this into circulation again. Maybe we can even get this republished and we can raise some funds for the Medical Mission Sisters on behalf of the incredible human being that wrote this book. I can't wait to read you more, and I hope I get that opportunity. If you would like, share, and comment, that will give me something that I can tangibly say to publishers. Hey, people want to read this book. Let's do it. Will you help me do that? Let me know. Let me know what you think in the comments. And again, I'm Nadine, and I am inviting you to join me on my journey from pen to published as I write my 5-part series, Charm Hawaii. I hope you have a wonderful day, and let's talk again in episode 3. Thank you so much for joining me today.